Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Knowledge is Power session. I'm Dr. Vivian Otterbohr, founder of Resilient Immigrants. For those joining for the first time, Resilient Immigrants is a movement, and we exist to celebrate immigrant advancement, amplify immigrants' excellence, and dismantle the narratives that have never served us, and inspire the leaders, present and future, who are rewriting what's possible. And today's session, which is navigating um, career and education as a newcomer, the Montreal Blueprint is going to be an exciting conversation we're about to have. And our guest for today is someone who has lived it. She's, been through the ups and the downs of what it means to be a resilient immigrant. And today, joining us is Urmi Hossain, who is a CFA and CAIA designated finance professional. She's also a self published author, a speaker, and the host of Stories Beyond Borders, a podcast amplifying diverse voices on identity, immigration, and what home truly means. Her book, Discovering Your Identity, A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle, is an honest and courageous exploration of what it means to navigate the world as a third culture woman and to choose yourself all the time. All right. So, again, Umi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. And Umi, I just did a little bit of intro about you. Is there anything else you would like to add?
Also, besides everything that you have just mentioned, I'm also part of an organization called Women in Leadership, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm the co-chair of the Montreal chapter. And I also do a lot of female mentorship. I'm a big advocate of women's empowerment, and a lot of my time is very much dedicated to mentoring the younger generation.
Awesome. That's your hands are full. I don't know how you do it, but you're definitely busy.
I am.
All right, so I'm gonna jump right into it. When we select topics not just because we want to have a conversation, but because it's going to impact lives. It's something someone is asking a question about. And every day, the data is there. There are newcomers going into Canada, going into Montreal every single day, right? And there's someone who is asking, where do I start from? What are the things I need to do? They need that level of information. And today's topic, which is the Montreal Blueprint, navigating education and career growth as a newcomer. For me, I want to just, the first thing I want to ask you to tell our audience, people who are watching, is what is your first impression of Montreal when you arrived?
It was a very positive impression, especially because I moved from Italy. And one thing that I very much noticed here is that there's so much diversity. It's very
Mm-hmm.
multicultural. And anywhere you go, you will see people from different backgrounds. And I noticed that each culture and the diversity is very well celebrated throughout the year, whether it is with the lunar year, whether it is by having, let's say during the summer, we have a lot of festivals, and each festival is associated with one culture. So we have the Korean festival, we have the Italian festival, the Greek festival, and I noticed that in Montreal, the diversity is very well celebrated, and that's one thing that I
Mm-hmm.
very much enjoy about the city.
Yeah, and Umi, I'm glad that you mentioned diversity because that got me thinking. Montreal is just very unique because it's a bilingual place, right? So people speak not just English, they also speak French as well, correct?
That's
And
correct.
so just in my head, I'm thinking for a newcomer adjusting to a new country, which is already difficult as it is, but then you're adapting to a place where, there's multiple languages, the culture is different. That adds a totally different layer of just newness. So when you first arrived in Montreal, how were you able to navigate that diversity, the culture? You know, I don't know if you were English speaking at the time you moved to Montreal, but how did you navigate all of that?
Yeah, it was a very interesting dynamic because, of course, coming from a country where the only language spoken was Italian, like I'm now
Right.
I'm in a place where I have to speak English, which is my third language, and then there is French, which is my fourth language. And what was
Wow.
interesting is that people would, when people approach you or in a store or anywhere, they always approach you with in two ways. They always say hi,
Mm-hmm.
bonjour, bonjour, hi. Usually French is the one that comes before, and then it's up to the person being served to respond in the language they want to be served. So you're always given the option. But when it comes to, let's say studying, let's say you want to study in university, you get to choose in what language you want to study, whether you want to go to a university which is French only or to go to another university which is English, but you get to choose that. However, the professional world is a little bit different, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you want to work in a place where you are very much facing clients, you are required to know both languages. And in some places, even like because we live in Montreal, French is more prevalent. And and I would say that is probably one of the most difficult thing for a lot of immigrants. Like I got to meet so many people moving from Europe or maybe you moving from other parts of the world and moving to Montreal. They always say like, oh, it's so much harder because of the French part. You know, everyone speaks English, but French is always a little bit, I would say, difficult, especially if you do not know how to speak it. It's always a bit harder to find job. And I think people for this reason they always move outside of the Quebec province. They go to another province where English is the one that it's spoken the most. But for me, it was a different experience. I did study in English. I knew how to speak English. I also knew how to speak French. But the problem here is that the French they speak, it's the Quebecois. It's not the French from
Hmm.
France. It's a different French. So I did take some classes, of course, um to to be able to speak or have conversation in Quebecois. And now I do work in a French environment. So my end goal at the end was that I was going to study in English. I did university in English, but then eventually I was going to get a job in French, and that was my end goal.
I mean, it's just amazing. First of all, did I hear you say you speak four languages?
Yes.
That's brilliant. I mean, some of us are still struggling to speak just one. So kudos, kudos to you on that, right? Um, but listening to you and hearing all the things that you had to go through and the things that the effort you made, because I'm hearing a lot of effort being put into just getting you to where you are right now and the success that you've achieved. What is one of the biggest mindset shift that you had to make to thrive professionally?
I really had to learn to always have that mindset of being a lifelong learner. Because one thing that I noticed in Montreal, and I don't know if this is something that applies to Canada and also the States, is the
Mm-hmm.
fact that people are like people in especially in the workforce, they're very knowledgeable, they're very competitive, like in the sense that they do have a lot of like skills and knowledge. And one thing that I noticed even in university was
Mm-hmm.
that people were always like thriving to do something more,
Yes.
meaning that you know you finish your degree and you think okay that's it, I'm done with studying, but then people
Mm-hmm.
continue doing more to like upgrade the skills to be better. And I think that was something that I really had to learn in order for me to be competitive and build that competitive advantage, especially in the workforce, because people really value that. Like it's important that you always invest in yourself, invest in your
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, get new certification, new skills and so forth. And it's very easy to hop from one place to another. In Italy, we don't have that kind of mindset. Like you, if you have
Mm-hmm.
a job, you stick to it until you retire. If you're done with
Wow.
university, you're done with it. You don't think about anything else. We don't have that mindset of like, okay, what's next? What is it that we can do? Like it
Mm-hmm.
just stops there. I noticed that in Canada, even in the States, people are willing to like put their time and effort to continue educating themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're spot on, and that's actually very true. And it leads me to my next question, right? Many immigrants, as we know it, arrive with so much talent, experience, even degrees, but they often realize that they need to adapt, or maybe their degrees don't translate because it's a completely different system, right? And I don't know, for you, it sounds like you went to school in Montreal. Did you already have some form of education in Italy prior to?
I mean, I did have my high school and everything, and then in Montreal, I have
Okay.
my I've done my university and so
Okay.
forth.
Okay.
So it was a different experience because I was getting my degree here. But I hear you when you say people moving already with a degree and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know how to make use of it. I totally hear you on that, and that's quite a challenge often because that is not recognized in another country.
Yeah.
Um, but I think for immigrants, it's also important to adapt themselves. Like if it's not
Correct.
recognized, to maybe use the opportunity to do a certifications, maybe get some
Mm-hmm.
extra experience. And I think it's also important to get that connection. If you know someone that already lives there, maybe ask them prior beforehand, do you think that could be recognized? What did you do in like if you were in my situation? Like I think it's important to also have that knowledge prior to moving because you do end up coming here and sometimes the the degree not being recognized. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. And so just, it's very important for us to highlight some of the challenges that we know that people face, right? Because many immigrants come and see that the culture is very different. Like how you mentioned, back home, maybe people might be laid back, not as competitive. You might have the competency but not have the credibility. And sometimes credentials become the bridge between what you know and how the market sees you, right? At what point, even after your university, did you decide to go further towards pursuing your CFA?
um I think it was always in my mind. I just wasn't sure how soon I wanted to start. I graduated
Mm-hmm.
in 2016 and I started my journey with the CFA in 2018, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And what made me realize that was that I would look around and see everyone doing something. It wasn't just doing like the CFA. Some people were doing a master's program. Some other people were doing different designation. And I told myself, if I don't do this, I will be in a very disadvantaged position because
Mm-hmm.
I could see how, the person next to me was so much better than me because the bachelor degree is important, but it's not enough. It's not any like it's really not enough anymore. You have to do something extra to add value to yourself. And I also had this end goal that I was going to eventually pursue it, and I'm so glad
Mm-hmm.
that I did because it really helped me to I would say it helped me really to build a certain presence, especially because this designation that I've done, this one, the CFA, is recognized worldwide. So even if I decide, let's say, to move to another place outside of Canada, it will be always recognized because people in the financial sector, they know what it is. And so I would say that I knew how to play that and be strategic about it.
Okay. And so I want to even go further to just, talk about how you were able to land your first real job, right, as an immigrant. Like, let's talk about that because that's also a part that a lot of people don't necessarily talk about the difficulty in that, right? It's easy as an immigrant to get menial jobs because of your accent or, whatever the case may be. But then you know that, okay, I know that there's more in stock for me. I want to do more than this, warehouse job or being a, store clerk or whatever the case may be. What was your experience?
Let me tell you this, my very first job, okay, let's just go a little bit back.
Okay.
Because before getting my first job, I was desperately trying to get an internship.
Mm-hmm.
And this was when I was in my last year, and I knew that I needed the experience, especially because I had no other experience.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do anything else besides studying. And I knew that this was going to be tough. And indeed, it was so tough because I would apply for so many internship and not even one person would call me. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then I would go to networking events. I was such a terrible example because I would just go there for the free food and then I would leave. I would not even engage with someone. I would not talk to anyone. I was like, I don't care, I would get a job eventually. But then time to graduate came and I was like, okay, I'll be really screwed if I'm not doing anything about it. And back in the days, I did not have a LinkedIn profile. I literally had no presence. Like I was like, oh, LinkedIn, who cares? Why is it so important? But and then what happened is I went to this career fair. Honestly, I think I just got lucky. I think I really just got lucky. I went to a career fair. I went to speak to this one person who worked for this company. And I said, okay, I'm graduating. These are all the skills that I have and all the knowledge that I have. And I'm looking for a job. I got really lucky because she called me 2 weeks later. And then that's how I got my first job. But it was just pure luck. Honestly, it was just pure luck. I think they were like looking for people. They were trying to hire new employees. But it was just luck. It was just luck because afterwards, even being in the industry for 6 years, I still face so many rejections.
So I want to talk about that. I want to even like go just deep dive into all of that. So your case was pure luck, you call it, right? I feel like the universe has a way of making things work in our favor. So you mentioned one thing, the difficulty finding a job, even as an intern, because we know that an intern pays significantly lower than an actual employee, right? But even at that in that situation, it's still difficult to find, an internship. Talk less of now that the economy is so bad. Everybody knows what's happening with, I don't know how it
AI.
is in Montreal, but, things are tight. We're hearing Facebook has, or Meta has layoffs, Google is
Mm-hmm.
laying off people, Microsoft. It's right now, it's like that's the talk of everybody. Um, but at the same time, people still have to find employment. People still have to work, and companies are still hiring. I want to just, I want you to explain or just help someone who's in that position right now, someone who's navigating um, that challenging space of, okay, maybe I migrated through school, the school path. I've done my education and now it's time to get a job. I don't care if it's an internship, I don't care if it's a low paying job, whatever the case may be. I just want to get a job. They're applying, but it's rejection upon rejection, right? I want you to just talk through a realistic path for an individual in that situation, because you also mentioned going for networking, you mentioned someone gave you an opportunity, a chance. What would that, if you had to draw out a workflow or just a path, what would that be?
So definitely times are a little bit different, not like right now, especially
Mm-hmm.
with artificial intelligence and all these changes happening on the technological level. And I think because things are so different, first of all, having a good LinkedIn presence is very important. And let me tell you why. Because when you're applying for a job for a job, the first thing people do is like they stalk you. They literally stalk
Mm-hmm.
you on LinkedIn and they want to see what is your presence, what is it that you can offer. And sometimes having those additional extra curriculum activities really, really helps because people can see, okay, what is it that you enjoy doing that is not just work. It gives you a little bit of a flavor of your personality. And I think having a good LinkedIn presence is very, very important. So having good recommendations, maybe listing out your projects or your volunteering activities, maybe showing that you are creative. I think it's very, very important. That's one. The second thing, we touched upon networking and connection, and I think this is even more important than before because I think really with connections, you get to, like, if you go to networking events, you get to meet potential employers, what is it that they're looking for, and you have a chance to like connect. But I think when you're connecting, you don't have to see this as a transactional type of activity, like I'm going there, I'm going to give my resume, next thing I got hired. I think you have to be really genuine in getting to know the company who's hiring people, and to show that genuine interest. Never think of it, okay, I'm going there because I need to get a job right away. I think just show your genuine interest is very, very important, and going to those networking events is very important. I think this is why you always have to make sure that you are giving an excellent impression because people will remember you based on the things that you say and the things that you talk and so forth. Definitely, that's very, very important. And then what's also very important are references. I know that I was lucky enough to get hired also through references. References, they just help you to get that first interview, and but then it's up to you to be excellent during the interview. So I think if you have good connections and you have people that really are, let's say, your supporters, your mentors, your allies, it's very important that you use those connections as well to have them advocate for you. And this is also something that it's important not when you get your first job only, but also when you start working, because you want to have also internal people advocating for you, let's say, to advance in your career. Maybe you want to get a promotion or, anything. So I think those are some of the things that you can do. And it's also like we also have to face the reality of artificial intelligence, especially for entry level jobs. A lot of them will be wiped out. But I think for new immigrants, new graduate, it's important to use artificial intelligence for your own advantage. Like if you can show them that you have a skill on that, I think that is something that can be valuable to a company that you're applying for.
Yeah, so these points that you mentioned are great, but I'm just, I'm standing in the place of an immigrant, who is navigating a new environment, they're still trying to integrate, they don't have their family and as much friends here. Um, Immigrants tend to shrink, right? Especially when they're new. So when you talk about LinkedIn, going to networking,
Mm-hmm.
speaking up, trying to build those relationships, I'm sure someone is like, oh, okay, how am I supposed to navigate it? Because at this point, that fear or a sense of I'm not sure what I'm doing, I don't have anybody with this blueprint showing me the way. Am I, can people understand what I'm saying because of my accent? Or, like there's 1,000,001 things, right, in their mind. And so, I know your experience might have been different, but when you think about it now, especially in Montreal, what is the atmosphere around new immigrants and just the acceptance of it to encourage someone who is in that position to just go out and try?
Yeah. You know what? I got the chance to mentor a lot of women who were
Mm,
immigrants who moved around. And one thing that really works, and I'm so lucky that we have this opportunity in Montreal, is that we have organizations that are just tailored to immigrant women who are trying to
mm.
navigate the workplace. So one of them is called Dress for Success, and it's based in Montreal, and it's very much tailored to women immigrants who are moving from their home country to a new country. And what happens is they are giving workshops on, let's say, communication skills, leadership skills, how to sell yourself, how to promote yourself. And these are most of the time these are free. And we also have a mentorship program where you are paired up with someone who's a lot more experienced than you, who have already went through that struggle, and you can ask questions. Like that's your support. That's where you start. You have a mentor who basically will support you and answer all of your questions. And that's something that I have seen more and more, especially nowadays with people moving around. And I mentor one of my mentees was from Nigeria. She moved from there, and she was like, I need to find a job. I don't know how to do that. And I told her like some of the things that you can do. You can maybe get an additional certification. Maybe you can start with something that is low entry position, and then you once you get the experience, when you understand a little bit about the workforce and everything, then you can move around. But I would say for me, the base is really to have that support system that a lot of these nonprofit organizations offer to new immigrants.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you mentioned mentorship because many newcomers try to figure things out all by themselves. Like they try to figure everything out by themselves, forgetting that someone has been there before in the same shoes, going through exactly what you're going through. And so just growth happens through people, through relationships, through community. So mentorship is very important. And I'm so glad that you mentioned a few of these organizations in Montreal where people can plug into to just gain that, relationship, the community, and, get the mentorship they require so that they don't end up making avoidable mistakes. Um, you
Mm-hmm.
know, yeah, because those things happen, they exist.
Yeah.
But let's even talk about a practical blueprint, right? Because that's exactly what this topic is about, is the Montreal blueprint. No two places are going to be the same. Some places have the nuances, right? If you had to give newcomers a Montreal blueprint for success, what would your top 5 recommendations be?
Top 5. Damn, that's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, so the first one, it would be to make sure that you are aware that it's a bilingual city. And if you
Mm-hmm.
want to increase the chances of getting a good job, you want to make sure that you know both English and French. Actually, know French better than English. That's a must, I would say. Like you will have a higher chance of being hired if you speak both languages. That's one. The second thing I would say definitely to have a support system or to find an organization like the one that I mentioned, like Dress for Success or immigrant or organizations that are very much targeting immigrant peoples where you can get to learn all these skills such as communication skills, leadership skills, because especially when it comes to communication, like it's very different from one country to another. Some
Mm-hmm.
body language are accepted than the other, so be aware of that. Then the third one, that's quite a lot. The third tip, I would say to always invest in yourself.
Okay.
Always invest in yourself. And that could be through workshop, webinars, could be doing certifications. I think you need to see yourself as an asset. And it's important
Mm.
that you come with that mindset. Like studying, learning doesn't stop in a classroom. It continues even outside of the classroom. So that's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing about about Montreal, and I think especially about Canada, is the weather. Let me
Hmm.
tell you this. Immigrant people are not ready for this. Like
They're
the
not
weather,
ready for the
no,
cold.
no. That this is why a lot of people leave. Like they do go in other provinces that are a little bit warmer. You need to face that reality that it does get
Mm-hmm.
cold. It really does get cold, and it could be hard. It could be really hard. Some people go through phases of depression. They decide to move to another province. Maybe they decide to go back home. You need to face that reality, and I think that's very unique as well of Montreal. And then the fifth advice, I would say to really get outside of that comfort zone. You know, you're moving to a new country and you need to make sure that you are getting comfortable with uncomfortable. So I would say like participate to social events if you want to make new friends. There's so many like opportunities in Montreal through Meetup, Eventbrite, where you can find out all these different organizations. You can find out all these like Instagram groups or Facebook groups that are organizing things that are just tailored, let's say, to immigrant people or even just people that want to make friends and just start getting outside of that comfort zone by participating to one of these events where you can make a new friend. You can get to learn something new about how they have moved around. Like I think it's important to start building that connection, which is not necessarily related to your professional life. It's just your personal life. You want to make sure
Right.
that you're also happy. So I would say those are my 5 tips.
That's great. I mean, and as you were speaking, a lot of questions were coming to my mind, right? So, for example, now let's talk about the cold weather because we know it's real, right? It's
Yeah.
real, it's painful. A lot of people struggle. And this is where some people, I hear a lot of immigrants will say, oh, they cry themselves to sleep. It's very cold. At that point, they're missing family. And just think about being an immigrant. You don't have your family or friends with you, especially during like maybe the holidays, right? So what are some tips, what are some suggestions for people who are in Montreal, newcomers, or people who are planning to come, when that time does come, which of course it will come?
Yes.
How should they approach and just navigate situations like that so that they can start having that mental prep?
Let me tell you this. I don't think you will ever be ready. I've been living here for 15 years, and every winter feels like the first one. It's
Mm,
honestly, it's really tough. The winter season can be really tough, especially when you have -20, you have 20 centimeters of snow or even more. Let's not talk about the freezing rain, which was like quite shocking to me. And I don't know if you're familiar with the freezing rain, but we do have that thing in Montreal. And I was like, I don't know what is this, but I just want to stay at home. And
mm-hmm.
it's I feel like it will always be a shock. The winter season will always be a shock, and it's always and it's always long. The winter in Montreal is always long. And this is why I think it always goes back to that support system that you have to build by attending all
Mm,
these social events that are out there. So you can make friends, so you can, invite them over. You can go to their places too. Like I think in that moment, you need to have company. You don't want to be alone facing the winter.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's very, very important, like making friends when you move to a new country.
Yeah, I don't think that can be, you know, we can't over just expatiate on that more than you already said because it's so important for people to have community, people that they
There
can
we
reach
go.
out to. Yeah, so even though, and it's difficult, to be honest with you. A lot of immigrants have those concerns of, oh, I don't want to go out to meet people because where do I start from? I don't know anybody, or I'm shy and my accent. A lot of things that people tell themselves, but it's so important, to have community, build
Mhm.
relationships. It would help in the long run. All right, so we've talked about a lot of things. Now, I want us to go into the professional aspect, right? Um, Talking about navigating um the workspace. What does that look like in Montreal? Um Again, I'm just going to, put it out there. Not all work environments are similar, right? Some are different. But overall, what is the notion behind what life is like working, being a 9 to 5 hour in Montreal?
Let me start from before you get a job. Let's start with the
Okay.
interview process. And I think that's something that, like even when I was talking about this to some of my high school friends from Italy, they were like, "What?" And one thing that you will have to go through is that when you're doing an interview, the interview will be in both in English and French most of the time. Yeah, most of the time.
Wow.
So you will have a set of questions. It will ask you questions like, tell me a little bit about yourself, or what are your skills, your strengths, your weaknesses. Tell me about a time when you had to manage something
Mm-hmm.
difficult. Let me tell you this, the interviewer will switch around between English and French. So
English and French.
yeah, you need to be
Wow.
comfortable with that. That's one thing that I think. I know that when I told this to my some of my Italian friends, they were like, "Oh my gosh, does this really happen?" But it does. You need to be aware of that. So you have to be aware of that situation. And once you are in the once you are in the workplace, I think what you need to be aware as well is that you have to always build partnership or allies within the company. Like these are also like your internal networks that are very important for you because, as I was saying, they will help you to advance, to get that promotion, and so forth. And there is also like in Montreal, I feel like in Montreal we do have a good work-life balance. I do feel like it's pretty good compared to other places, and sometimes I even feel like it's even better than the one I've seen in Italy because I hear some of my high school friends telling me, "Oh yeah, I'm doing like extra hours, I'm doing overtime." Whereas I feel like in Montreal, yeah, you do it in some jobs, but not in all of them. And I do feel like they do value a lot that work-life balance. So typically, a typical traditional hour would be 8:30 until 5, or you can do 9 to 5:30. And one thing that Montreal is known for is we call them 5 à 7, which is from 5 to 7, which is the happy hour. It's very much celebrated in Montreal. Like after work, you go outside with your coworkers, you go for drinks, you do activities, and it's very important to really bond with your team members or your team. So that's something that is also very much celebrated in Montreal. Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned the interviewing, people need to prepare themselves to get, both languages thrown at them at the same time. That's one. Um Now getting into the job, you mentioned, being able to, not just do the work, but get to know the people that you work with, right? Which I think is atypical for like most work environments is, try and build a relationship or rapport with the people that you work with because they're the ones who would most likely advocate for you in rooms that you're not in and things
Hmm.
like that. But um just what is the uh work-life balance or culture for work in Montreal? Like, do we have people who are um constantly working to impress, or is this a case of, oh, I've done my part, I can go, or do I have to where I'm from, we call it eye service, where you're basically trying to do work so that people around you think that you're the most hardworking person. Like, is that the case? Would people throw you under the bus if you're not doing those type of things? Can you just get your work done and be on your merry way, or do you have to, do extra?
So I think it depends on the company because every company culture is different. And I've seen everything that you have just mentioned. You
Mm-hmm.
have those that are like working until 8 p.m. to like impress whoever. You have those
Mm-hmm.
that are sitting in their desk and not doing anything.
You?
You pretty much you can see anything. Like you pretty much can see any sorts of like people doing that. I think what's very important is that, especially when you're working in a company, that you are aware of that. Um, I personally, I don't think that companies celebrate someone who's like really working until 8 p.m. I think they value more the quality of your work rather than quantity of your work. I'm also very like if I talk about my personal experience, I don't think you get anything out of working until 7 personally. And I think what really, and here's the other thing that I did not mention is that in Montreal, in many of the companies, is that they do offer that incentive for you to actually, let's say, do certification. So for me, like, let's say I had them, a lot of the companies I worked for, they paid for a lot of my certification. So I could like leave at 5 and then go and study, for instance. And they really value that because they really want to invest in you. So personally, like by 6, people are usually out. Some people are out before as well. I think it's changing the environment. Maybe when I started it, we really with a lot of more emphasis on like working late hours. But now with the changes that we see, there's a lot more flexibility. People demand that. People want to work from home. People want to start late. Maybe they want to, let's say, finish early. Like there is a lot of the people are willing to accept that. And that's the thing about Montreal that I have noticed is that we really do value the work-life balance, and we want to give the opportunity for the people to really enjoy their time outside of work. I lost the audio.
Oh, so I was saying that the
Okay.
majority is that most organizations are pretty flexible. They allow people just, do what is best for them. Okay,
Mhm.
that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Because I know that in the US now, most companies are pushing to go back into the office.
Even here, don't
So
worry. Even here.
so that's the thing that we have to be honest about. Like, okay, if you're thinking, oh, 100% remote, you might not get it, right? You need to be open-minded about either a hybrid work setting or 100% going into the office. Just bracing that cold weather because you got to do what you got to do and all of that. So, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Umi, I mean, this conversation has been great. It's just very refreshing to hear your experience, your wealth of knowledge on just how you've been able to navigate um, life as an immigrant from such, a teenage um, age to adulthood, your career, the things that you've done, your certifications, the effort you've made. navigating the culture, learning new languages. The list is endless. Now, if you had to turn back the hands of time, right? What is one thing you wish someone had told you when you first arrived?
You know what? I would say I wish people told me a little bit more about the weather. I think that was a big shock to me. I mean, it still is, but let me tell you this. My very first experience with the winter, it was a struggle. Minus
Hmm.
40, minus 40. I used to go to
Wow.
university minus 40, and I was like, there is no way I'm gonna survive this. And one day we had freezing rain. So I don't know if people are familiar with this, but when we have freezing rain, it's raining. But then the rain, when it touches the ground, it becomes ice. So it's like an
Nice.
ice skating ring. So you can't walk with normal shoes. You need to
Mm-hmm.
have like something extra. And I fell. I
Mm-hmm.
remember I fell and I was like looking around, hoping no one saw me, but I could not even get up. So
Oh,
that
wow.
was, I wish someone told me a bit more about the freezing rain because I was like, I don't know what that is because we don't have that in Italy.
Yeah. And just, when you think about the weather here, I mean, where you are and how it was back home in Italy, do you go back home? Do you miss it?
I do miss it, but you know what? I do miss it, but I don't think it's the time for me to go back to go
Mm,
back and live there because I've seen the situation in Italy and how it is difficult for young people of my age, people younger than me to look for a job or to build a career. And you know what? A lot of them are also moving out of Italy. And there is a reason why. There is a reason why they're moving. I listen to a lot of podcasts where they talk about it. They're all moving because there is no future. So as much as Italy is amazing, and I know in the eyes of so many people, Italy is amazing, it's not a good place to work and make a living.
mm, mm. So since you moved, it's been 15 years. Have you gone back to Italy?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I did. I did. Yeah, many times. It's my home. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay, that's awesome. All right. And so if I could flip the question, what would you say to the newcomer who's listening today, who feels behind, who feels discouraged, uncertain, scared, frustrated, alone, all the feelings that a newcomer would face, what would you say to them?
You know what? I would probably tell them it's your chance to be whoever you want to be.
Hmm,
Yeah, no one knows you. You can literally be whoever you want to be. Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. No, yeah, because you're actually starting on a new clean slate.
That's it.
That
That's
that
it.
is amazing.
Yeah.
That's definitely a perspective that I have to tell my mentees as well. Yes, I love it. No, this was great. I loved it so much. So Omi, I know that we're getting up on time. Just, you've been very helpful. I know that you're connected with a lot of organizations that you support immigrants and you do good work. So if the people who are watching would like to connect with you, can you tell us how they can do that?
Yeah, they can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I do have quite a presence and I'm pretty easy reachable. So LinkedIn is called Urmi Hossain. And if people want to find out more about the work that I do, they can go to the Women in Leadership website. There is also the Dress for Success website. And I also have a podcast if people want to listen to it, which is also about immigration stories. It's called Stories Beyond Borders, and it's available on Spotify and Apple Podcast.
That's awesome. And then how about your book? Where can they get your book?
It's on Amazon, and it's called Discovering Your Identity, a Rebirth from Interracial Struggle.
Awesome. Umi, it was great speaking with you today.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for your time. And so for the viewers who are watching, again, this is Resilient Immigrants. You're watching Knowledge is Power series. Again, information is key and knowledge is power. Until next time, thank you and have a wonderful evening.